Hi, my name is Ralph Galen. I'm a local minister and activist who moved here from New York City some time ago, and Lawrence is now my adopted city. And welcome to 30 Minutes. 30 Minutes is a program where through appreciative inquiry we attempt to empower people in their lives and in their missions. And today it is my great pleasure to have Victor Martinez, a new friend and a colleague, the Executive Director of Communities Together, and we'll find out a little bit more about what you're up to. And the focus of today is to talk about Immigrant City and how it is rising now to be immigrant strong and welcoming immigrants in the age of Donald Trump. So, Victor, just tell us a couple of minutes about you. You're, I believe, an immigrant yourself.
Yeah. So, thank you for having me here. I appreciate this wonderful opportunity to be here with you and to share the stage with you as well. So, but yeah. So, immigrant and immigrant strong. Well, we live here in the city of immigrants, Lawrence, and we know what Lawrence is known for. You know, Brother and Rosa Strike, and we live in a nation that is established, built for immigrants who have an aspiration to live a different lifestyle, right? To pursue that American dream, which has definitely evolved over the years. But yeah, I come from Dominican Republic, very humble background, humble upbringing. You know, my family's, we worked the fields, coffee fields, and we worked in the sort of in the countryside. You know, I had to churn my own cow. We had to, you know, pick our own you know, fruits and whatever it was for us to be able to eat. And I had the privilege of coming here to the United States when I was 7 years old. And it was not easy, the track, really the transition, but it was necessary for us to come here in order for us to find an opportunity for jobs, an opportunity for my family to also give the next generation, which is my generation, an opportunity for us to have access to education, and for us to become professionals and for us to contribute both here in this country, but then also to help out in the Dominican Republic.
Did you have family in the United States?
When I first came here? Yeah, I have family here. My aunt was already here. My family's a big family. Most people in Lawrence know my family. We have a number of corner stores and stuff. So I had a lot of family members that are already here. And they, you know, when they first came here, it was very humble beginnings. They were doing jobs that other people didn't want to do. You know, they were working in the laundromats. They were washing dishes. You know, they were bussing tables. You know, they were, you know, waking up at 4 or 5 in the morning. They were working odd hours. Sometimes they were working the night shift. So I did have family members that were already here, and they were really working extremely hard to make ends meet, pay bills, but then also have a little bit of something left over to send back home. Yeah.
So there's a relationship, isn't there, between Lawrence, certainly, and the Dominican Republic? Isn't Lawrence the third or fourth largest Dominican city, something like that?
Yeah, I think so. You have Dominican Republic, obviously, the largest place where you could find Dominicans. I think then, if we're not second, I think we're definitely third. I think maybe like Washington Heights might be the only other place that has as many Dominicans in one concentrated area. But in terms of overall share, like social capital, political power, economic power, I think Lawrence probably is definitely sort of on the high ranking part, because Lawrence is a very unique city in that sense, for Dominicans in particular.
What I want to get at is there's a relationship.
Yeah.
It's just like we have a little Statue of Liberty, you know, over the Central Bridge, and it's saying, give me you're tired, you're poor, those who are having difficulties, because there's a relationship between the United States and the Dominican Republic. It's not that it's an independent sovereign nation, but it's also similar to Puerto Rico. There's economic cooperation between the two. The United States is invested in the Dominican and so on, and in Central America,
right,
and so on. So shouldn't be that much of a mystery that there's so many immigrants in the United States.
Yeah, well, I mean, when we talk about immigrants, it's interesting because I feel like we have to go a little bit deeper into that conversation. This is a country that was established by individuals who migrated from another place. They were fleeing, right, persecution.
Back in the 1500s, of course, a few thousand years before, the Indians came.
Right. And so, when they arrived here, there were individuals that were living here, right? And so they made themselves at home in a different place. And I think that if we really look at sort of the history records, they were not necessarily fully embraced, but there was some curiosity as to why you're here. But there was no persecution of pilgrims. Right?
No, I think they did more of the persecuting.
Exactly. So I think we have to look at the history of America. I think we also have to look at the evolution of the different types of immigrants, the wave of immigrants, and the reason why those immigrants were here. Because again, it comes down to economic power. It comes down to, who does it benefit for immigrants to come, and who does it benefit for there to be the signature, like the enemy, see the immigrant as an enemy. Who does it really benefit at the end of the day? And I think we have to look into history and see how what the answer to that question is.
Fair to say that right now there's a lot of fear-mongering and hate-mongering going on, and a lot of misrepresentation. You said that you milked your own cows. Well, there happens to be, there was a farm in Wisconsin, I don't know what town it is, but this American citizen is saying that he just bought this thing called a merry-go-round, like a merry-go-round, where the cows go on this like conveyor belt. And he says if the Trump immigration policies go into effect, he's out of business. He just decided to develop the economy by spending $1 million on this contraption, and who is the one who's doing the work? It's largely Mexicans who get up they like catnap, and they get up 2-3 times. They're at the milking the cows 2, 3, 4 times a day on this contraption, and if they're not there doing the work that other Americans aren't doing, he's out $1 million, and we don't got milk anymore. So this interrelationship, it's like we think there's 11 million people living like Anne Frank in somebody's attic. The fact of the matter is the 11 million undocumented people are walking freely and an absolute part of American society. We see them at PTA meetings, we work beside them, and so on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I want to mention that, when we think about immigrants, there's always been this lashback against immigrants. But why? I think we have to ask this question. Why is it that we looked down upon these individuals who are contributing to our society? These individuals who remind us, right, of our history in order to get into this country.
Well, you say there's a lashing back, backlash. In 1847, there was no backlash. It was putting signs up in England, in the mill towns in England, which may not have been prospering, and inviting people to come to this planned community, this utopia called Lawrence, and to work in those mills. And the promise was that there's practically gold in the street.
In the streets, the streets were paved with gold.
They were invited.
But they were invited, and they were invited to be exploited. And I think that that's a key question that we have to start looking at.
But they weren't hated. They were invited with open arms and then subsequently exploited.
Absolutely. And so I think that we have to start looking at the way that we value human beings and the concept of integrity.
Well, I don't want to let this go, but you are a student at Boston University School of Theology.
I am.
And you're hoping to graduate with MDiv, with...
Yeah, so the goal would be that I would graduate out of there with a Master's in Divinity, with a plan on transitioning forward and getting my PhD. And, where does that come from? That really, I'm trying to follow in the footsteps of, sort of those leaders that we hear about in the civil rights movement. One in particular, Martin Luther King, and that's where he went to school. And for me, who I did not have a positive male role model in my immediate vicinity, I looked at some of these folks in history who have done great things, and so he went to BU, and so I figured I'd find my way there. Why not? So I'm at Boston University now, and that's one of the things that we're talking about a lot is, who is actually an insider and who's not, who has actual value and who does not, and why is it that we think that it's okay to really look at it in a capitalistic society, really decide that certain individuals mean more and matter more to the overall ecosystem of keeping the United States alive because of
they're
commodified,
commodified
because of their status, because of who they are, because of their skin color, because of how tall they are, because of all these different variables that at the end of the day don't honor the human being, right, as a whole, as a complete.
Where do we hear this discussion in the executive orders banning people from Muslim countries and so on? See, I can't help but agree with you, and I think that Dr. King also became familiar with some of the great transcendentalists and Unitarian thinkers, and even went so far as to not plagiarize, but borrow from the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice, which is Theodore Parker, the famous abolitionist who died in 1860. That's a completely different orientation. I don't see any of that happening in on the cabinet currently, in any of the departments of government. It's not even a throwaway. It's completely based on the fact that on not facts. It's based on alternative facts. One of the greatest alternative facts is that immigrants commit crimes at a greater rate than non-immigrants.
Right.
And that is, I'm expecting you to say,
right,
it's totally wrong.
Depends on what we consider to be a crime. I think that right now in today's day and age, especially in America, we consider immigrants to be just criminals, I think
I'm talking about robbing somebody, stealing a car.
Right, we would find
by those statistics.
I think that we would find that to be erroneous. I don't think that that's true. I think that we have to really look at the statistics and why, it's easy to believe that if the way in which the numbers are being codified and the numbers are being gathered prove that. Meaning that the powers that be determine what crimes get reported and which ones don't. And so, I think that's
the fact, not the alternative fact, but the central fact is that immigrants commit crimes at a lower rate than non-immigrants. So the people to be afraid of are not the people in North Lawrence, maybe, who are living in a tenement, but their neighbors to the south.
Right. And so, but to look at this idea of crime, right, and to think that, to assume, and that the narrative continues to play, right? Because at the end of the day, this is the narrative. It's playing itself, and history is repeating itself in terms of the powers that be saying, these individuals are coming from our country, they're trying to take our jobs, but really, are immigrants taking the jobs of Americans? What kind of jobs are they really actually taking? And are those the types of jobs that individuals actually want to do?
Let me put a plug in for Avi Chomsky, Noam Chomsky's daughter, who wrote a book, They're Taking Our Jobs, and 20 other myths about immigrants. They're not. Stephen Colbert did a number here where he said, well, I'm going to go to one of these lettuce farms, and he went there and he said, how many non-Mexican immigrants have come here? And he said, well, you're the first one. Nobody wants to be here. And they had him weeding, which is a very arduous job. You ruin your back by the time you're 45 years old. So there's a relationship between this labor force and American prosperity.
Also thinking about the concept of immigrant. The immigrant's not only the people coming from Muslim nations or countries. It's not just individuals coming from Central and South America and from Mexico. I was just at a local restaurant not too long ago, actually just last night, and I met someone from Ireland. Who's
the,
here?
The Irish Immigration Center is alive and well.
Absolutely,
They're
you
big
know.
partners.
I think that we have to look at really realistically like how we value certain bodies more so than others. So does that mean that the people who look Anglo, does that mean that the people that are coming from European descent, do we value those immigrants more so than we value other immigrants?
The history of immigration is, as you've maybe spent more time than I have, but my grandparents, and I would not be here, they came over in 1910,
Right.
and they weren't sick, and they joined. My grandfather worked in a restaurant, and he was bussing tables at first, and then my grandmother wound up working in what we call a sweatshop, and died. In their 70s, still employed in making these phenomenal dresses, for a very low salary. But in the 1920s, I don't know exact date, but those people there was a quota system, and people from Eastern Europe now were looked at askance, and then we looked at people from the north of Europe and from the east, white or whitish people, and that was changed under Lyndon Johnson, and he opened it once again. And it became a family-based thing. If you have family here, that's a great testimony to your wanting to come. And now we find a reversion back to the restrictive 1920s immigration policies, which the people in the cabinet today wanted to have from many years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is also thinking about fear, right? How do you play on individuals' fears? And I think that as a country, we have to analyze the way in which history has unfolded. And for the most part, you have individuals that are very fearful of their loss of, their jobs, loss of their safety. And a lot of these are somewhat illusionary. They're not really true. And it's so easy to really manipulate and create a narrative that works to the advantage of the proletariat, those who are rich, those who are at the top. Right now, what's happening is, look at sort of the divide and conquer model and say, you know what? Right now, economically, we're not doing well. We're in debt. The capitalistic system has certain things that are not working well. They're not functioning well. This is happening not just in America, but it's happening across the entire globe. And so, let's distract individuals and let's make pretend. Let's create a problem, and let's also offer a solution, so that we can. In essence, we can detract individuals from looking at the larger global issue.
So we have scapegoats.
We have a lot of scapegoats. I mean, I think
immigrants.
We're quite familiar how scapegoats have been created and the use of scapegoats in order so that the middle class in particular, like we have to look at the middle class right now. Does the middle class really think that people coming from another country is really going to be a threat to them? We don't have immigrants are not going to immediately come into this country and get a master's. We're not going to get a PhD either. So I think that that's something that we have to consider and look at. Also, in terms of like a capitalistic society, I mean, who's really taking the jobs? Well, there's this thing called artificial intelligence. So there's this thing called machine learning. 90% of all Google does is machine learning. What does that mean? There's a complicated algorithm that figures out patterns, that knows how to predict certain things, and that knows how to manage human beings. And so if we're thinking about what the real issue is in terms of jobs and jobs being taken away, is it really human beings or is it machines? And who is actually in control of these highly sophisticated technology that is putting people out of jobs? It's not the immigrant coming across, the border. Is there a real fear? Yes, I think there's a real fear. I think that we should definitely have a pathway, one, to citizenship, but also figure out how is it that we can look at the individuals that are coming into this country and are illegal. They literally are a threat, right, to the safety of the society. But that's not to say that every single immigrant that's coming into this country is coming here, as was mentioned by the by the governor of New Hampshire, to peddle drugs. I don't think that that's true.
Well, we know it's flatly not true.
It is not true at all.
Just like that individual who was ripped out of his car with his 13-year-old daughter going to school. Obama was the deporter-in-chief, according to Luis Gutierrez and other people. And it was just a fact because he had deported more people than previous administrations. But he recognized something called sensitive places. And those, he didn't go into churches, he didn't go into schools, didn't go into hospitals, didn't go onto an athletic field, and basically divide families in a manner that we haven't really seen.
It's just inhumane. It's just inhumane.
World War II or totalitarian governments. So what we want to do is reintroduce the humanity in this situation, and let's, time being what it is,
right.
I want people to be able to, well, they get in touch with you if they have an issue with a neighbor.
Yeah.
By the way, and I think it was 2011 that Secure, or 13, that Secure Communities came along. And at that time, I, along with then Mayor Lantigua, said this is not going to provide security, nor is it going to build communities, and it hasn't. The Secure Communities has changed into PEP, and now it's going back to a more rigorous form, where we're hearing that hundreds of people are now being deported, mass deportations.
Yeah.
Every Mexican consulate now is activated. There are legal offices on the border. It's not a system that has been thought through. It's a knee-jerk response to the fear and the panic. So let's look at the microcosm. That's Lawrence now. What is happening now in a minute or so?
Well, in a minute. I would try to mention that by the year 2050, I think that people recognize the Latinos are going to be the largest minority population in the entire country. 2042. Probably 2040. Yeah, 2042. So
you got 25 years to learn Spanish.
Yeah, it's accelerating. I think we have to really think about how can Lawrence be a model for figuring out how to effectively work with an immigrant population and ensure that they can contribute to society, that they can acculturate, right, and learn how to navigate the system, but contribute and be and own the American identity. I think that we're doing a great job here in the city.
So what about the people who are contributing but they don't have papers? What's the status for them?
So I mean, I think that the individuals who don't have papers, I think we have to have a frank discussion about that. You know, if these individuals that are, I know plenty of individuals that are undocumented, that started their own jobs, they're paying taxes, they have a tax ID number. These individuals that are also trying to get educated. We have over 2.5 million students who are in the DACA concept. So I think that there is a pathway for citizenship for those individuals as well, because genuinely within their heart, I feel like a great majority of those individuals want to be able to contribute and want to stay in this country and give back. We have to have a discussion in public about that. The other thing I would mention is that Lawrence, at the local level, we are organizing. I'm not saying that it's perfect. I'm not saying that we're also harboring or sheltering any individuals who are committing crimes. What we are doing is we are protecting families. I want any individual who feels completely against the concept of sanctuary or is against immigrants to walk up to a family and to rip their parent and to see the impact that it has on a child's face, right? And so we have to humanize this thing. Okay. We can't. So
you're encouraging non-immigrant neighbors to meet their
come and meet these individuals, find out who they are. We are gathering, we are meeting we're having meetings that are taking place.
And if they can reach you?
They can reach out to me directly if they want to know about what's taking place and where we're meeting and how often we're meeting, and they can reach me.
How do they do that?
So I'm the executive director of Communities Together, and they can reach me at victor@communitiestogetherinc.org, or you can just reach out to me personally and just give me a call. You can call my personal cell phone, 978-494-2354. So again, 978-494-2354.
And you're among a number of people that have stood up to take leadership on this issue.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's if we use common sense and if we have an open heart, if we see that there is a family that is being threatened with deportation, you can slow this down, call you, And although we're not going to identify these places, already in process, there are sanctuary churches.
Right.
And as a Unitarian Universalist minister, I'm proud to say that there is another church in Denver, the First Unitarian Society, which has opened its door to a woman and her 4 children who has been regularly reporting but is afraid of having her family divided, afraid of going into detention. And let it be said that Lawrence itself is a trust city, and there's a safe driving bill here. And what that means is that the police chief and the department have gone on record to say that they will not automatically
Correct.
Bring somebody who has no papers to the attention of ICE. That's not their job. Their job, as a detective told me yesterday, is to fulfill the laws of this Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and that they will do. And please, folks, if there are crimes being committed, believe you me, it doesn't really matter. The police don't ask if you have papers or don't have papers. They do their job. And they do it pretty well in Lawrence, which is a very challenged city. So we're to the end of our time, Victor.
I know,
It just flew. We've got to get the issue of immigration on a better footing. This is a
Absolutely.
nation of immigrants. This is a city of immigrants. The Bread and Roses strike had maybe, I thought it was 50 different ethnic groups, 25 languages or more were being spoken at that time. And it led to tremendous reforms. We can do this. So thanks for tuning in. I'm Ralph Galen. I think this discussion is going to continue, but be part of the discussion, and please engage and get to know the people that you think are the other and that you're anxious about, and you'll find out that your life will be enriched by your neighbors. This is all about friendship toward our neighbors. Thanks for tuning in.
That was great.
I think we're off.